Just this week, one of my artworks was criticized by the world-renowned art critic, Jerry Saltz. The specific artwork was an NFT derivative of this painting. So it was just a brief exchange on Twitter, and I'm going to break it all down. But I think it's a great example of a collision of two distinct philosophies from an artist's perspective and an art critic's perspective. And I definitely think it's worth further examination. Plus, I've just been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for like 3 days, and I can't get it out of my head. And I need to work through it all. I'm going to talk about what happened, what was said, how I responded, and what is left unsaid, and what needs to be talked about. Yeah, if you're involved in the art world or interested in the art market in any way, I think you're going to find the dynamics at play here really fascinating. So like I said, I'm going to break it all down, unpack the whole thing, really get into the weeds on this one. But before we jump into it, let's get some context. Who is Jerry Saltz? So Jerry Saltz is a senior art critic at New York Magazine. He won a Pulitzer Prize in 2018 for criticism. He also has a bestseller. He wrote a book, How to Be an Artist, which I guess I should read now. I first saw him on TV. I can't remember the name of the show. It was years ago, like The Next Great Artist or something like that. It's one of these reality type shows. And I want to say, before we get into the tweets, I'm not offended by what he wrote. I just want to make sure I say that up front while I'm still calm. A lot of my friends, I have shared this with them. Some of them were irritated, frustrated, maybe offended by what he said. I'm not offended by what he said. I am frustrated by what he said, or maybe the lack of response after I responded. And that's what this video is all about. So I just want to make sure up front, like everyone understands, I'm not offended by this, but I do take issue with it. And I think it's complex, and we're gonna get into it. So, basically, Jerry had put this tweet out there that said, to all the naysayers crowing about NFTs, that there cannot be art, that someday there will be a Francis Bacon of NFTs. He's trying to say, look, don't poo-poo the NFT market. It is an art form. There's going to be great artists coming out of this, yada, yada, yada. And so why did I respond? Well, it's pretty simple, right? I'm like most artists trying to get my name out there. I'm trying to get eyeballs on my stuff. Part of this whole thing is getting feedback, is getting interest. It's trying to grow a market and an audience. And so, of course, just like everybody else on the thread, I'm going to throw my artwork in there and say, hey, look at me. And that's what I did, right? And I wasn't, I didn't give this much thought. I just interjected myself into the conversation, and I said, pretty sure my NFTs are art. And literally my only goal was to get not necessarily Jerry, but someone else to at least see what I'm doing and respond to it. I was very surprised. I was honestly surprised that he responded and wrote back and replied, and I'm thankful that he did. Here's what he said. So we're going to go through it. He says, your NFT is art, of course, but it is very, very derivative art. It really looks like mid-20th century abstraction. No? Why make other people's work? But I do hope you can make a lot of money, and I do wish you the best. All right, so I'm going to read through my responses, and then I'll go into detail about, I'll break it down for you. So I responded, well, this style came to me honestly. It started organically in a way to deal with my grandfather losing his personality, Alzheimer's. It's not my only style. I'm still experimenting. I'm trying to find my true voice. I appreciate the feedback, which he liked my comment. So let's back up a little bit and break down what he said and what I really have an issue with. Your NFT is art, of course. Okay, great. Thanks. I mean, a world-famous art critic acknowledges that my art is art. I think it can be argued that almost anything is art. So, right, this is like a throwaway statement. Art is impossible to define. It's subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You've heard all these things. There's even art now that's invisible, literally. People are selling invisible statues. You can Google it. I'm not kidding. Whatever. I appreciate him at least saying that my art is art. I don't need him to validate that my art is art. That's why I didn't ask the question, do you think my art is art? I just said, I feel my art is art, right? I feel my NFT is art. I'm going to get into more of it later about the validation piece. But this next part is the part that probably would offend most and probably did offend some. It took me by surprise, but it didn't offend me. But, he says, your art is very, very derivative art. It looks like mid-century, mid-20th century abstraction. Yeah, fine. Okay, so what? This is true. And I'm okay with that. As I explained in my response, I didn't set out to copy anyone. I'm not trying to emulate anyone in particular. I came by it honestly. This started with a way for me to deal with my grandfather losing his personality 20-something years ago. And, it just kind of unfolded. Have I been influenced by these people? Sure. And we're going to get into that a little bit later too. But there's something interesting about derivative art. If two people come up with the same exact brand new concept, completely independent of each other at the exact same time, in different locations, and one of them shares their work and is discovered, who do you think will be deemed the genius? The second person, even if they come out later and it is verified that they had nothing to do with each other, they didn't influence each other in any way, the person who comes out first is the one who's going to be credited. That's the way it works. The one who follows is always derivative, even if they weren't influenced by the other. We care about novelty. We care about the new. Jerry has self-interest here. He needs the artwork to be new. It doesn't serve him for people to be doing things that have already been done. He needs content to further develop his career as an art critic. That's what he makes a living doing. And so he needs new art to criticize. He doesn't need old ideas. And I get it. Now, I'm not saying what happened to me and with my art is that I came up with this completely on my own and it's never been done before. Of course not. I'm absolutely influenced by other artists and other artworks that I've seen. Certainly the likes of Picasso and Pollock and Kandinsky and Weber and many, many more. And I'm okay with that. That's part of what this is. This is part of who you are as an artist. This is how I see it. This is how I grow. I have to work through these things, including all these influences that have happened to me over the course of my life. And before we get into the really juicy part, I want you to check this out. Here's a portrait of Jerry posted on his Instagram recently after he had eye surgery, and wish him all the best. I hope his eye is great. I hope everything's good. And it's very clever, but it's also very, very, very derivative of another famous artwork. So I guess it's okay for it to be derivative as long as you have context. Or maybe it's okay just as long as it's a portrait of Jerry. All joking aside, let's get into the part that really bugged me. Why make other people's work? So this really got to me. And again, I'm not offended by it, but it did stick with me and it does bug me. And I think the first part is that it's insinuating that I'm copying. And like I've already talked about, that's a huge assumption. Again, the work is certainly influenced by other artists. But no artwork was referenced in this creation, right? Like, I'm making this from myself, from my soul, from my heart. I may be working in styles that were established by, other people who came before me, but this is my own interpretation of that. And it's how I got to get to the good stuff, right? This is how I have to get to the stuff that's deep inside. I have to work through these things. So this question to me feels like it would come from a person who's never really made art, or at least hasn't stuck with it for a significant length of time. Now, in Jerry's case, I happen to know that he was an artist at one point. So for him, maybe it's coming from a person who's forgotten what it was like to create artwork over a long period of time and work through this process. Or maybe forgotten what it was like at some point, maybe in the beginning, of working through and becoming someone who is producing good art. We have to work through these things. We have to work them out. Now, the even bigger assumption, I see this from galleries and outsider perspectives all the time. People assume this is all that you do, or all that you're capable of doing. Like I said in my response, this is not my only style. I'm still experimenting. I'm trying to find my true voice. We all struggle through this. We're all trying to figure it out. Do I think I've arrived? No. Do I think this one piece of artwork represents everything that I'm capable of or have done? Of course not. I'm not oblivious to the fact that this work is visually and stylistically related to mid-century masters. Nor do I feel like I've arrived. Should I stop sharing my work or trying to sell my work until I feel like I've created something completely new and undiscovered? Like some unknown genre of art? I mean, come on. Like, what do you mean why? Like, why make this stuff, right? It's like, because I'm an artist and I'm trying to work it out. Like, I'm trying to get to that destination. So what am I supposed to do with this comment? I mean, it's just a shallow, easy, hot take. And there's nothing more to say. And, there's also context here. It's on Twitter, right? Like, what do you expect? But having said so, there is the ability to respond to comments like I responded to his. I'm left hanging here, right? Like, I really wish there was more of a conversation. It's easy to say these things and, like, not give any guidance. It's an unfinished conversation. He liked my first reply, but that's the end of it. Swoop and poop, in and out. Here's the deal. It's easy to say things like, be original, be unique, be yourself. And that's great, but it's really hard to tell people how to do that or give them something tangible that they can use to help them do that. Maybe that's in Jerry's book. Maybe I'll find that out if I read his work. Maybe he should have responded and said, hey, read my book. It's got all the answers. Great. I'm stuck here wondering, what am I supposed to do next? So I've been thinking about this. Like, say I decide to focus on the most primal, raw, deep in my soul imagery that I can make. And by the way, I'm trying to do some of that. I'm focusing on these things that I did very, very early as a child. And if I focus on the earliest artwork that I made as a kid that wasn't influenced by anyone except for my surroundings as a kid in the 70s, my artwork is going to be childlike. It's going to have simple line work, written text, primary colors, and it's the closest thing to the art I made as a kid, the first art that I made. And you would think it's the closest thing to being unique to me, the most unique self-expression that I can make at this point in time. The problem is that inherently, the rudimentary nature of these elements, and to some degree the images that I include, based on my experience as a child, are going to remind people of another famous artist by the name of Basquiat, right? Jerry and the likes would look at that work and say, oh, that's derivative of Basquiat or de Kooning, and on and on and on. Just on a related note, those people are gone. Should their art styles and genre of art die with them? So for those of us who follow, should we not be allowed to explore further the genres of work that they discovered and created? That doesn't make any sense to me. So who's got the formula? Who's got the plan? For those of us who are spending every waking hour obsessing over these deep-seated needs to express ourselves, right? We're early morning hours, late nights, in the studio, pouring our souls out into these pieces of paper and unappreciated canvases, trying to find our true voice. Who's got the answer? What should we do? How do we evolve and grow if we don't make and share these things with the world? I'm pretty sure even the Beatles, right, played some bad music at some point. They had to practice other musicians' songs to learn how to play before they figured it out. That's why, right? That's the why. This is who we are. We have to. This is what we do. I hope you make a lot of money, and I do wish you the best. Okay, I appreciate that. But this isn't about money. Would I like to make money doing this? Yes. But only because it would free me up to do more art. I do this stuff on the side, right? This is not how I make my money. This isn't my job. It would provide me more time and resources to create more art, which I'm absolutely interested in because I am on a lifelong journey to figure out my true unique voice as an artist. I guess the biggest assumption is that maybe you don't think I'm trying to be unique or want to be unique. Of course I want to be original. We all do. We just haven't figured it out yet. We make these things and we share these things because that's part of the process. So I would say, your questions, Jerry, have certainly motivated me. They've given me a lot to think about, and they are helping me get my act together. They're helping me get my head around this whole thing, and I do truly appreciate the feedback. But I do have a question in response. Why did you respond this way? Why do you, as an art critic, care if my artwork is derivative? Why does it matter to you so much? Do you truly have good intentions and you want to see us artists achieve most purest form of expression? Or is it coming from a place of boredom, or maybe it's rooted more in your self-interest to have more novelty in the art world because it serves you best for that to be the case? Without something new, you don't have anything to write about. So I guess where I sit with this, because I'm never going to get an answer from Jerry, at least now, maybe I will read his book. Maybe I will seek out other books on the subject. Maybe I'll go deeper into trying to figure out the answer to that question of how do we become more unique and more expressive and more original? What is the formula to try to get to that place where our artwork is, singularly expressive and not representational or influenced by anyone else. Just a pure expression from the artist's soul. I'd love to know how to be original and unique. I'm looking for that formula. But everything, almost everything, is derivative and a remix. So the only thing I know how to do for now is to continue to follow my interests, follow the things I'm attracted to, work on those things, practice, create as much as I can, and let the work evolve. Maybe somewhere along the way, I'm going to find that pure inspiration or that moment of genius, and I'm going to create something that someone somewhere thinks is completely original and new. But until then, I have to continue to make work and share it. My final thought would be to all the art critics out there that are providing all this criticism, maybe just think about providing a little guidance as well so that the criticism can be a bit more constructive. Thanks for watching.